Start.
We're going live?
It's pretty easy. Yeah. Shoot. Yeah.
This will pick up both.
Good. All right, it's 10:03. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
They're all around.
Where are we going?
Excuse us, I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Cannot have too many flags.
We did have extra flags.
We did, yeah.
All right, we'll restate the agenda. We have adoption of agenda, which we're doing now, the restate public input on non-agenda items. If we do have members of the public that would like to comment, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Consent agenda, we have items for minutes and check approvals. The fire chief report, unfinished business, we have none. New business, we have the chief's update on the state legislative work. Our director of finance will give us an update on the Ian cost recovery. And then we as a board will discuss fire chief recruitment and that process on how we move forward. Chief's remarks, the attorney's report, and then our remarks. Do we have any changes to the agenda at this time? None? Okay. Any public input on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion for approval of minutes and the check approval on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Chief's report. Chief Worth.
Thank you, Chairman. First off, good morning, commissioners, community members that are watching us online, the folks in the audience. Thanks for being here. I'd like to start by thanking you, Commissioner Bennett, for having trust in me to pick up and keep the organization going through this interim period. So it's only because of the highest confidence I have in the folks that are here today and the rest of our crews and also in this board that I felt comfortable stepping up into this role. So thank you. So over the last month, we've been out telling our story and fostering those relationships that have been built since the storm happened, working with local, state, federal folks to help us get through. Specifically, earlier this month, we were in Tallahassee with the help of Ms. Donaldson and her group, talking to the legislators and working towards projects that we have going on. I'll cover that more in our new business items. Internally, the folks are getting back to normal. This month, all 3 shifts were able to take part in live fire training down in Bonita Springs. It's always good to, get out there and do training, and kind of helps us get back to normal. So I want to thank Chief Armiger for his leadership in the operations branch and putting together those monthly training plans that will help our team continue to keep moving back to normal status. Also know the crews are looking forward to temporary Station 31. We talk about that a lot when I'm in the stations, and I'm glad to say that project is moving forward, and hope to have more on that next meeting. So, in the community, it's nice. We're also seeing signs of progress, starting to see some stuff come out of the ground. In plan review and life safety, we're seeing, an uptick in the volume of plans coming in, and the inspectors out in the field are keeping up with the inspections and getting everything done. So it's good to see the community getting back on their feet as well. Finally, I'd like to recognize our IT specialist for 1 year of service. Congratulations, Craig. Yeah, Craig's been instrumental over the last year, and getting thrown into the mix, and having a hurricane was just key in keeping us up and running in the days after the storm. So congratulations, and thanks for everything you've done. With that, turn it over.
Thank you,
Thanks.
sir. All right, next item, unfinished business, we have none. New business. Chief's update on the state legislative work.
Again, more on that. Last month, you guys gave us permission to retain the firm of Manson, Bowles, Donaldson, and Tanner. And those folks have hit the ground running, and they were with us and helping us as we were up in Tallahassee, meeting with the folks up there. We met with some key legislators, and we're able to tell, able to tell our story and inform the congressional members of where the district is and the beach as well. So you know that we have a project that is being co-sponsored by Representative Botana and Senator Martin. And that project is for $19 million to help us with the replacement of Station 31 in the headquarters facility. Ms. Donaldson and her team were responsible or were able to arrange meetings with the chairman of each of the House committees on hurricane resiliency and recovery. Several staff members and directors were also able to be met with, and those are the folks that are responsible for making the recommendations of whether our project makes it into those budgets. So we were also able to get some time with Chris Spencer. Chris Spencer is the head of the Governor's Office of Policy and Budget. And if our project should make it through the process and end up in the final draft budget, and the time comes for vetoes on behalf of the governor, Chris and his team are the ones that are going to decide which projects remain and which ones have to be cut. So hopefully being there and telling our story will allow us to make it through the final cut. So yesterday, Jane and I spoke with Ms. Donaldson and her team, and we got an update on the status of things. So right now, our session is she explained that we should know any day if we are going to make it into the initial budgets for the respective committees that are looking at our project. She did warn us if we don't make it into these initial budgets on either the House or the Senate, don't panic, that there's a lot of other opportunities in this process for our project to be reintroduced or reinserted into the budget. So we have about 5 weeks left in session before we know definitively whether we will or will not be successful in whole or in part in accomplishing this project. With that, do you have any questions?
Jim?
No.
No.
Thank you.
It was a good report.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Ron? Question?
No.
No, thanks, Chief. Great
Okay.
work.
Thank you.
And thank Ms. Donaldson also for her hard work
Absolutely.
in making those things happen. Let's see, we are on to our next item, our Director of Finance report on the Ian cost recovery.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Jane.
I am happy to report, by and large, very good news across the board. Another group that hit the ground running for us was AC Disaster Consulting, the consulting firm that's helping us through our cost recovery process. You agreed to their contract at the last meeting. They spent a week here going through everything, getting up to speed. The handoff was very smooth between the state-appointed folks that were helping us and the consulting firm, so it was a good handoff. They're plugged into all of our deadlines, and there are many deadlines as it relates to FEMA, as a lot of us know. So I was glad that everything has been very cohesive, and they're very quick. We have standing Thursday meetings. They attend the standing Tuesday meetings with FEMA. So yeah, that's moving along very well. In terms of the dollars and cents cash flow wise, we have received between insurance and FEMA funds on obligated projects that they've paid out a portion of. We're kind of at a break even versus what we've received and what we've paid out. Now, granted, a lot of our big ticket items are yet to come, like the elevators, the roofs, et cetera. But we're kind of getting to the end stages with our insurance. There's, been some hiccups in the reports that we're having to work through and have them, revisit their adjusters reports to make some corrections. And I think at the end of the day, we're gonna be in very good shape monetarily between the insurance and the projects that we're working through FEMA with. For example, on the apparatus, in conversations, we may not necessarily replace the old engine and one of the ambulances, and if we decide not to do that, what they'll do is take the difference between what we would have paid for those apparatus and the amount that we receive from the insurance and pay us the differential. So, and allow us to use that on a different project, like if we want to purchase a different type of engine. So that was all good news. That differential equates to right around $400,000. So I would say, good news, a lot of work still ahead of us, and we're working through it, but nothing that happened very quickly, obviously. One of the great pieces of news is the state, which I can't say enough good things about the state federal department or the state emergency management system. They worked through the weekend and they got our project pushed through on the Station 31 report at the 50% rule, because that's a pretty big deal for us. That was the first hurdle we had to get through, is to get that report that the architect and the state signed off on up to FEMA. Once they review that and they agree that we are over the 50%, that is kind of the starting point where we can move forward. Because after that, we'll be able to produce the next report for them that shows the cost to rebuild, and that'll set the kind of the high water mark for what they will provide us over and above insurance to put towards building the new building. So that's sitting in FEMA's hands right now. They're reviewing the report, and we were told at the meeting yesterday that we expect an answer back from them one way or the other, probably within a week or so. So that was a big milestone for the district in moving forward.
Jay, you indicated that if we get the insurance money for a fire truck, for example, and we decide not to spend it now, is there any leeway in terms of choosing a different kind of project? You kind of indicated that you could look at another vehicle, but can you look at like repairing the roof or something, or another with the...
Yes, we can choose an alternate project. Obviously, we just have to, put out the scope of work for what the alternate project is and have them approve it.
Now, when you say them, that's FEMA?
FEMA, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
I'm just taken aback at how rapidly this is going to progress here in the next month or so. We'll have a lot of answers to questions that have been lingering for quite some time. So I'm glad for that. A little nervous about that. We'll see how that goes.
I have to say that the state has been instrumental in moving this forward very quickly. Even the folks from FEMA said they couldn't believe how fast our projects are moving through the system.
Can you give me the name of the FEMA person that I need to talk to? Because I'm not having much luck. Yeah, well,
Ron, anything?
For once, good news from the government, because that hasn't been my experience. Thank you. It's nice to finally get some real.
Just thank you for staying on top of it and being so committed to
Oh, of course.
watching it.
Again, it was all the connections that everyone made with, all the folks from the Department of Emergency Management from the state that came down early on. Y'all were meeting with them, telling our story, and the more you do that, the more they're in the forefront of helping us. So it worked out very well.
Thank you very much. Great work as always.
Yes.
all
All right. Next item of business is fire chief recruitment. I'll start that off. We know Chief Martin resigned last Friday. That put us in a new mode of where we move forward and how we move forward. So, we as a board need to decide whether that process is going to be an internal or a local or a regional and national search. I have my feelings on that, but I'd appreciate everybody's input on what they feel is best, so we can meet the qualifications, as I jokingly said with Chief Worth last week. We're seeking input from everybody. The community, our leadership, our team members that are working every day, our union reps, on what are the qualities on top of the requirements that we would like to see in our next district leaders. So I'll start with Jackie.
So we've had conversations about this in the past as a board, positioning ourselves should we ever need to find another chief. And I think in our past conversations, we've all said that should that ever arise, or even when we were talking about going from Chief Love to the next chief, that we wanted to make sure we were getting the perfect candidate, the best candidate available to us, no matter where they came from or what their background was. So I feel really strongly that we need to look at all options when we're choosing someone to continue to lead us. This is a very unique time, even more unique now than it ever was before. It's going to take somebody with an incredibly strong and multifaceted skill set to get us through this and to take us forward. And I think everyone's input is valuable. We need to solicit the community. We need to solicit folks who are interested in the position, certainly listen to our partners, with union and kind of do a nice broad search. That's my feeling. I don't want to rush into something just to get somebody in the position.
Right.
I want to get the right person who's going to continue to take us forward.
I would agree. Ron, any additional?
Yeah, whoever it is we would decide on, that person needs to start immediately, giving notice to their employer, and not have to get all the certifications as Matt Lodge. I mean, he was in school for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
We need a chief that's going to get to work. Hopefully, when he's still working for his other.
Right. Yeah. Somebody has all the total qualifications.
Also, so that basically is Florida. I think our requirement of a master's degree is restrictive. I have a master's degree. Education's great, but if you limit it just to that, you can say preferred. But if we minimize it has to be a master's, then I think we're eliminating a lot of good candidates, and that's things to talk about.
I think that, my opinion on the masters, and I don't know how everybody else feels, is it's a commitment to furthering your career in education. Given the level of responsibility with the district and the scope of our financial responsibility, it's certainly desired, and in my opinion, would be mandatory. I think if we open it up to, my feeling is national recruitment. And that allows everybody. If you're in Florida or if you're in Alaska, everybody in between is eligible. If you meet the qualifications, you're certainly eligible to apply. And then we take that pool, and with the recruitment agency, we're able to narrow those down. So we're not doing the work of going through 1,000 applications. We get down to a final 10. And if we fall short in that initial search, then maybe we look at changing those requirements to preferred instead of necessarily mandatory on the masters. But that's my gut. Jim, anything?
Well, I think, like you said, having the master's degree is indicative of a commitment to furthering your education in your field. But I do kind of agree with Ron that there are a lot of probably really qualified people that have had experience that could make up that difference. And I would probably lean more towards desired versus required, because we wouldn't even get a chance to see someone if it was a requirement. But I think as a board, we feel pretty strongly that we want someone that can step up and lead this organization in the most challenging time ahead. And that the qualifications to do that are probably going to require that kind of background, experience and educational background, as well as just a little bit about who they are, their personality, their style, their experience, ethical background. So we have a work cut out for us, and I'm getting the sense we're going to probably use some sort of some assistance from an outside agency to help us. I think we probably have to open it up beyond just the local region or even the state of Florida. I think we could accept anything from anywhere. And as we begin to sort that down, we may choose to, because it's in our best interest to stick with candidates from Florida. But I wouldn't want to eliminate someone that was interested in coming here that might be the most qualified and perfect candidate if they just happen to live, in Georgia.
Right. Larry?
Currently, do we know, are there any Fort Myers Beach fire personnel that meet the qualifications?
The full
Do we
qualifications?
know that?
I don't know for certain, but I don't believe so.
I don't think so either, but it'd be interesting to see if that was just the masters that precluded them from being considered. And obviously, I'm in education, and so I
Evaluate.
I value it highly. But I wonder if we have anybody that's in our currently here, that the only thing that's holding them back is the masters. Because there are some qualifications.
Chief Worth is probably our one candidate that comes to mind immediately.
That's what I was thinking. So,
Chief Armiger probably would meet the educational requirements. He might not have the experience requirements that are listed, and then I would be short on the education requirements. So I don't believe that.
And of course, you have in the past had that as a requirement during a period of time of employment.
Right.
Obviously, with the concerns that you have, wouldn't require it as soon as you might in another situation, because you obviously don't want somebody who's going to school while they're trying to get up to speed here, as Chief Love had to do that, as was mentioned. But you could put it in as a latter part of the agreement.
Within 5 years.
Right.
And I was gonna ask the board how you would feel about that, or somebody who has partially completed it, or is in the process, or, putting something in with a deadline.
Right.
John, this is on our agenda for the retreat.
We'll discuss in general some things at the retreat, but it's, we kind of need to give direction today on how we want to proceed. I believe, and Jane and I talking last week, that we did a study prior to Chief Love as far as qualifications and community input and internal input as well.
Yes.
Is that still an available process that we can seek? So we would need the community input before we really proceeded any further if we're going to go that route.
Did you use a professional recruiter for Chief Love?
Yes.
Yes, we also used what they call the DACOM process that was facilitated by Dr. Dorset out of Iona at the time.
I'm sorry, it might help you to at least start with the recruiter to see what's out there,
Right.
which could mold how you determine some of these issues.
But the last time it was they then, we met. They used a professional recruiter who, one of the steps was, they contacted people, then somehow that was whittled down to maybe 20 or 15, and there was a community group, people like Al DeRed and John Lallo, and, a union member, JP was on it, and they got it down to, I'll say 6, I really don't remember 5, and then it got down to, I think, 4, and, then they picked Chief Love.
Do we
Jane?
have a recruiter currently with us that we would use?
I mean, we could reach out to the same recruiter, or we could reach out to, you know, try and, I mean, if you want to do a bidding process for the recruiter, you know, that'll add on time, obviously. But, you know, but we could check with other districts throughout the state to see maybe who they may have used. I don't
Jane,
know.
do you remember how long it took us to do that when we selected Chief Lowe?
I want to say it was 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, it seems like it was at least that, maybe longer. Because it was probably a month just getting those finalists to come in and meet with the,
Right, because we also went through the, like I said, the DACOM process in the beginning, where it was a group of firefighters, administration, other, I think, another fire chief in another district. There was a pretty broad scope of people that determined what, that went to the job description in the end. You know, what were we looking for at the time in the chief? And so it really did lay out the foundation for the job description that's currently in place.
Well, and I was going to say, that really hasn't changed. So you have that in place. Are there terms or conditions you want changed?
And I guess that's the feeling, you know, given the hurricane impact to the district, you know, have opinions changed on, you know, one of my personal feelings would be, you know, for a new candidate would be somebody who maybe has experienced this level of comeback before and damage to their organization and communities. So they know the pitfalls and the things that you really need to do. And that's, you know, and the other thought I have as well is, you know, we'd mentioned the possibility of an internal candidate. Before we go to the process and expense, do we open that up internally and agree to make the master's degree a desired and not a mandatory requirement, and then see who our internal candidates are before we move forward?
or the concept of if they didn't meet the educational, they would have X amount of
Correct,
time.
yeah.
You know, 3 years, 4 years, whatever
There-
whatever's feasible.
There's nothing wrong with you starting everything at the same time.
True.
Right.
You could make the request for internal candidates, you could then set up the group that you want to add these different terms to, and ultimately, if, you know, depending on what you're doing, you know, if you find the internal candidate, then you're done. If you still want to have that group in place to determine these additional job description issues, doesn't hurt anyway. The only thing that you're waiting on then would be the recruitment, which you'll have to decide, I'm sorry, whether or not you want to do statewide or national or both.
Once we embark on one of those choices, let's say we decide to go with statewide, can we rescind that at any point at
Of course. You
Okay.
can reject every resume you receive. It's all up to you.
Okay, so if, while we were going through a statewide process, if we weren't satisfied, we could go to a national. Of course, that would waste a lot of time, but
And I'll give you a perfect example. That's what happened in Clearwater. They originally had a panel for city manager, and they rejected them all. And they had another panel, and they hired some, and they fired him after a year, and hired and promoted somebody internally. But yeah, same process. You can do whatever you want.
Well, I'll add that the only two chiefs we ever required to have a master's degree, neither one are here.
But that's not totally unusual given the lifespan of the position. I mean, that's
there aren't any here right now,
Yeah.
so no matter what category they're
It's true, yeah, all of our past chiefs are past chiefs.
They're past chiefs, yeah, so
Can
we
we
have one.
send to us the latest, greatest version of the job description also,
Oh, of course.
so we can take a look at that?
Yes.
And we could, is there any direction we'd like to make today? So we can get
Do
the ball
you want us at
rolling?
least to announce internally that we will accept applications?
That's my thought, but I wanted to get everybody else's input. I don't want to be the catalyst for this, but that's my feeling is,
You know, I think we should, and I think we should also take a look at recruiting companies, what are our options, so that we start to understand which ones we may or may not look to. And then if we look at the job description, then we can see what things we may or may not want to have in there still or add to it.
So we'll do that through a recruiter, is that what you're saying?
No, the job descriptions
We can do, right.
We need to look at the job descriptions. We need to see what recruiters we might use, if that's appropriate. We also need to internally you know, put the call out and see if anybody is qualified internally and interested internally. That would be my opinion.
I would say,
We don't have to wait to hire a recruiter. We can place ads in the national trade magazines and stick.
Because somebody's got to vet those.
Right,
Well, I mean,
that's a
yeah,
workload that we're
we-
already
we-
burdened with other things.
Well, I mean, an address, and then when we have a recruiter.
Well, were you
this is what
happy
we
with the
got,
prior
this is what we
recruiter?
have
Because
already.
we can reach out to the prior recruiter. You've already, vetted them, if you were happy with them.
it's been quite a while.
I mean, the process obviously worked. We were successful in hiring a candidate and,
Or we
He
can at
was
least reach
fully
out and see
qualified.
what the cost would be to bring that back to you.
There's no problem, if we put it out as just local at this point, and we said, let us know if you have qualifications, and if we decide to say, for example, you get 3 years to get your education, whatever. At any point, we can change that.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, and we don't get any problem, somebody suing us for,
Nope, until we sign on the dotted line on the employment agreement, we're fine.
that helps
Yeah.
considerably.
Yeah, you could definitely reach, if that's what the board wants to do, you can reach out in the county, in the tri-county, whatever you want to do. I mean, we can do everything, we can do many of these things at the same time. Internally, reach out to the, local area, however you want to do it.
Have we hired the community relations person?
We have not. That's Jane.
Good job for that.
right?
I kind of like the idea of looking internally as well as locally, regional, maybe the tri-county area, or to see if there would be anybody interested in the position.
Maybe do something where we look, if we go national, of course, there's the cost of the advertising.
Yeah, that's a whole different
And the process,
animal,
but then
right.
we're also dealing with relocation expenses for a candidate if they're out of area.
Relocation, the cost of bringing them down, although we can do
Right.
some things by Zoom, I'm sure you'd want the final candidates to appear in person. I mean, there are a lot of costs that are associated with that.
I wouldn't, that's the last resort if we aren't satisfied with here. That's why I keep asking these same questions. But I think we start small, this area, our firefighters here, of course, and then maybe the tri-county area, and then see what happens.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Just thinking of the resources that would be available if you wanted, you mentioned Tri-County area, and I get where your head is. We have a Lee County Fire Chiefs Association, so it could be blasted out countywide. That's going to hit all the members that are actively employed in other departments, and that's about the extent of it. And then from there, a lot of the job postings end up on the A-list, which is the state's system that's available for job postings. Logistically, I'm trying to think of how we would hit just the Tri-County area, but we can talk about that.
Could
and figure it
probably
out.
do that just in the description, candidates, Southwest Florida.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be limited to
Well, I don't
tri-county.
think we should start out
Yeah.
recruiting only the Southwest Florida.
We should do the whole state.
I mean, do the whole state.
Well, it sounds like that's available from that organization, so that might be the simple way of doing it. Look, again, you could see candidates,
Let's get started.
you could have a candidate from Jacksonville, and you could have a candidate in Lee County, and you go, well, yeah, we'd rather, in our minds, we'd rather have somebody local. They understand what we're going through, and doing that. There's nothing wrong with making that determination once you see the applications.
However, most people in the state know what, they now have an idea of what it's like here on the beach.
True.
So we're only asking for a messiah to come in and, to
Is that
say-
all?
Yeah, that's all. Well, I think that makes sense. Why not go to the state?
And just
Go-
start
go.
with the state.
Internal and state
Yeah.
for
Are
advertising.
there fees?
The other thing I would advise the board is this: you currently have people in place that can run the department, so you can take your time
Right.
in this situation. And obviously, you want to get somebody in relatively quickly, but by doing these many things internally, statewide, you're not under the gun to say, okay, we don't have anybody who can run the department.
Right.
You obviously have
Right.
experienced chief, you have, the rest of your staff is experienced, so.
It's true. That was one of our first questions of Scott.
Mr. Salzman, do we need to make a or a motion and vote on this, or is this just direction to the staff?
Just direction to staff,
Okay.
I think is okay, and I think you guys have. Jane has,
Just one,
So we'll do,
I think Jane.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Just to make sure that, I understand everything I'm hearing. We're going to put out solicit a letter of interest internally to our members for anyone that's interested with the current job description the way it is, or if a master's is preferred rather than required.
we haven't voted, which,
Well,
we
it-
agreed to that.
I don't know. It's-
I would say, let's amend the expectations. before we
Let's
send
do
it
this.
out.
Let's,
'Cause otherwise, if I don't have a master's, or I don't have 9 or 10 years, I've got 9 years, I don't even bother, and that might be the candidate.
can you get us the job description
I'll do that very
today?
quickly.
Okay.
Yes, can we do that
We can
Friday?
talk about this Friday,
I
maybe?
would- yeah.
Just the job
If you
description
can get it
portion?
to us, we can discuss it specifically on Friday.
I'm sorry, we were talking about another issue to ask you, so I didn't.
Is it appropriate for us to review the job description Friday?
No, you can do that.
Yeah.
Can we?
Because if we could have a day to look at the
Right.
job description and we can all make our thoughts,
Right.
get our thoughts
Friday's an
together.
advertised meeting.
It is.
So
Yeah.
you
No
can
different
take
than
whatever
this meeting,
action
really.
you want to do. You can do action on there. We were just discussing that if we got in, maybe we should look now for who's going to vet the applications when they come in. If we need to get an agency at least in line, because if we start getting those in,
Right.
we're down people, so we may want to have somebody helping us in that process.
And I think we should, you don't want to put that on top of
Yeah, I
anybody
would
this
agree.
year right now, because everybody's plates are pretty full. And I would
Jane's
be-
face just,
Yeah, I would be highly, and by the way, that's what they do.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that's what they're good at. Let's get some help.
So if the
here.
board's okay with
Latest on
that,
Staff.
we could go ahead and move forward on at least contacting somebody locally to be able to do that for us. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Friday we'll finalize on
Yeah,
the,
make all those decisions.
the process, internal plus state, or internal only, or state only, or whatever we're going to do.
That way we'll know by Friday who's interested in helping us, if you reach out to them, what agencies would be interested, who's capable of helping us, we'll have a better idea what's in the job description, what each person wants to maybe add or take out, and then we can.
And we'd like to, you're right, that's very important to have. If we're putting out an ad, we want to have a
Yeah.
job description for people to contact and have
Yeah,
there.
and if you're gonna, make somebody go through the hoops of at least expressing their interest, they deserve a prompt reply.
Right.
We can't be,
Yeah.
letting them sit for days
Right.
until we decide who's gonna look at the emails, so
I would agree.
it's not fair.
All right, so job descriptions, we'll finalize our thoughts on that Friday. But I think right now it seems we're internal plus state is kind of our general direction.
Right.
And the masters is going to be maybe the one thing we'll
Negotiable.
look
at
at.
this point, on
The
Friday,
other
we'll
thing-
decide.
Yeah,
On Friday, we'll
certainly.
decide how
Yeah,
to.
for me too, if somebody has some kind of experience with disaster recovery or some type of experience, in some shape or form, whatever that may be, that would be something I'd be
Well,
interested.
we can put all those in as preferred, right?
Sure.
Disaster experience preferred, master's degree preferred, or considered, it doesn't mean that it's mandatory, because you said, what if you get a really good experienced person who fits the mold, and they just don't have some of those things, but from you all having done this, that experience is invaluable. Experience, I'll say this against my own self, but just having a degree doesn't mean anything, right? If you don't have the experience. That being said, I have a lot of experience.
And degrees. Mr. Sullivan, is there any, I know in the past we've run into previous folks in the command staff that were committed to requirements within a timeline. Have we contractually been safe in all those? Say if we hire somebody and say in 4 years we need to get a master's completed?
Well, we did that with Chief White.
Right.
Of course, he never did it. But, there's nothing wrong with having that provision in there. It's one of the ways, and I think you all are different in that you would look at that annually, Just want to remind you, where are you on this, as opposed to, just letting it happen. So I think you all review people differently than prior boards, and I think that would be something that we would look at. Because I think it's unfair to them not to know that, at least, hey, what are you doing? Well, I haven't had time to do it. Fine, but by this date, we recommend that you do this. I mean, you're looking at somebody, and the way we draft these employment agreements are, I'm not going to say they're one-sided, but certainly they're leaning towards the board being able to determine if somebody's not doing their job, that we need to move on. So if you're not showing the board that you're moving forward on these things, we can look for somebody else. Because we know, and unfortunately what happened with Chief White is that it became impossible, right? The time period became impossible to achieve what he had promised to achieve. And so if you're looking at that, you got to at least say to yourself, well, we have somebody that doesn't seem to be dedicated or want the job the way that they've agreed to. So
I mean, if they haven't enrolled at 18 months prior to contract renewal, then
something like that, yeah.
it's pretty evident. Okay, great. Any questions from Chief or
As
Jane?
somebody who's gone back and gotten my master's while working full-time, multiple full-time jobs, you can do it.
Right.
But you just need to do it. You need to plan for it. You need to be smart. And there's so many ways now that you can do that with the technology that we have.
Right.
So.
It's much easier, like,
Yes.
I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier to get the classes, it's easier to do things online. It's so much easier than it was before, so.
It's more accessible and attainable, I think, than it's ever been.
Now, do we pay for those classes?
Well, we will have to negotiate that.
Right.
Okay. That's an option.
Normally, I would consider that we would, because we're encouraging that person and we're trying for a long-term position, all those things. I've seen that normally where we do that. And then you can get into the minutia if you want to. I mean, you've seen those things where you go, okay, if you have to have certain grades, and I don't necessarily recommend that. If you're having an executive person, that they know what their responsibilities are. And if they're not achieving those or not signing up or not moving forward, then you have to make a determination as to what we're going to do moving forward.
And looking ahead to Friday, I think, giving them considerable amount of time might be wise at this point, because what we need is the person to come in and help with everything that's going on here and not be overly concerned at getting a course in whatever.
Right, you're in a different
course.
circumstance than
Yeah,
you
this is
were
totally different.
when you hired Chief Love, right?
Right.
So
Right.
your priorities are different. And
Yeah.
so the fact that, and I think that's why you all brought up this whole issue about experience versus having the degree. Yeah, the degree is great to have, and we can have that on the back end, but right now you need somebody who can jump in and deal with
Right.
these issues, which are specialized. So, I mean, that's really more of a concern as you sit here today.
And I think I don't want to lose sight of just as important as all these qualifications is fit, whether a person is going to be able to assimilate into this organization and become part of this family, as opposed to someone that they might have every qualification in the world on paper, but they don't have the personality or the ethics or they're not going to fit in. And I think, in my experience, people are hired for their skills and abilities and fired because for their personality and their inability to fit into the organization.
And I'll take it one step further, the organization and the community.
Yeah.
We're a very unique community here, and,
Yes.
and we have learned now how far collaboration gets you when you all work together, and we're very interesting and unique, so
I mean,
it takes a special kind of person to fall in love and become inside the chair, so we all know that.
I can tell you from just my opinion as one person on the board, those are the two sides of the candidate that we have to look at. What do they bring to the table in terms of experience? But that capacity to fit into our organization and our community probably is more important to me than those skills. And you can teach this stuff. You can't teach this. They either have it or they don't. And we have to be able to discern that in the process so that when we hire someone, they got it.
And I think as we progress through the process, I know most districts or organizations, they'll do, say the final 3 candidates, you bring them in, you do a meet and greet with everybody. Have a cook it at the firehouse, and, the shift folks get to interact, the community gets to interact, whatever, whether it's just a couple of hours of time, and you can see how the person deals with the public, how he's going to deal with the persons in the organization, and also, how he or she presents themselves in front of the board.
Right.
And that's, again, that's the down the road, but I think we're on the right direction. And we'll finalize those thoughts on the degree and maybe some other additional requirements on Friday.
Well, the qualifications are just there to make the first cut.
Right.
Right.
You know,
Do
that's,
we know who the town's using for their search for town manager? Because it's the same kind of public.
But I do, their consultant that they've hired full-time was our HR consultant up until she went to the town. So I'll reach out to her.
Well, there's also
Well, I
specialized,
can find out who. Can put it down.
there's specialized recruitment as well
Right.
for fire chiefs. I mean, it's,
And I believe it was JTS was the name of the firm that we used the last
Well, if it-
and I can pull their contract and reach
Yeah, we
out.
might be able to piggyback on what they've done, so from their bid, that could save time.
She was talking about for the last month, or for the Chief Love search.
Oh, for
You were
Chief
thinking of
Flood.
the town.
I was thinking of the town.
Okay.
all right, any other input?
Good.
Questions, Chief, James, sir? All right, finalize that on Friday. Fire chief remarks, item number 10.
Just a few things. Early Sunday morning, we had a small fire on the other side of the bridge, foot of the bridge. Had a mobile home over there that was out of service from the storm. Pretty much fully involved when we got there. The crews did an excellent job. Got the fire under control very quick. Everybody went home safe, so job well done by all the folks on the floor. And then the only other thing is that I had the opportunity to speak with Megan Contreras Saturday for quite a while, and I just want to publicly thank her for everything she did. If you don't know, Megan was the PIO that Iona McGregor allowed us to utilize after the storm, and she kept with it, kept helping us. She has lived on the beach and reported news locally, so I just publicly want to thank her for everything she did for the district and the beach in the months after the storm. So that's all I have.
Thanks, sir.
All right.
Mr. Salzman, anything?
No, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner remarks. Jackie, you want to
Can we
start?
start with you?
Sure.
No, just thank you to everyone for putting it together and continuing forward with the mission and recovery. The entire staff, of course, everybody in the stations for responding. I want to make everybody aware that April 2 to the 4th, 2nd to the 4th is Southwest Florida Days in Tallahassee. The chamber, I will be attending that as the president of the Fort Myers Beach Chamber. And we are going up with the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers. So we will be there united to represent Southwest Florida and to meet with our legislators and talk about all of the issues here that are important to us, not only in Southwest Florida, but I'll be focusing on Fort Myers Beach, obviously, businesses, residents, tourism. If there's an opportunity to talk to folks about the proposed legislation that could come with the station, I'd be happy to do that as the chamber president, representing our community. And everyone is welcome to come to that. If anybody would like to join us, the public is welcome to join us. There's a bus going up with you Sunday morning, come back Tuesday evening. It includes the hotel room and everything else. The Chamber of Southwest Florida is the one putting this on. So you could reach out to them if you can't figure out how to find them, email me at the chamber and I can certainly send the information forward. It's a wonderful 3 days spent together. We get a lot of good work done. We get a lot of personal one-on-one time with our legislators. A lot of times we get to spend a few minutes with the governor or, get to do cool things like go to the governor's mansion or, the Supreme Court building or some of the other departments. So if anyone's interested, please do join us. And, certainly we'll look to push Fort Myers Beach back into the spotlight again and And as the chamber president, you guys know I'm working hard to keep us in the spotlight and make sure that no one's forgetting about us, and we still have a lot to do here. So that's about all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Fleming?
I'd like to thank staff, particularly Jane and Chief Ward, for keeping us above water. I was once told that the island could not float. I guess that theory's gone.
Wow.
You know, we have a lot of challenges, and I'd be remiss if I did not mention Chief Martin. I got the email, I was shocked, then I was mad, and then I got over the mad part and started thinking about Ron. I was with him when we were the first people over the bridge. I went to 32s and he was there and he said, I'm going. And I said, well, I am too, because I wanted to check my house. And we finally made it to my house, and it took about an hour. And as we're walking down, the destruction was just unbelievable. There were no governmental agencies except an old commissioner and the chief. And it wasn't until we got to my house and I have a brick wall, and he was sitting on it, and I was behind him, and I could, at that moment, I realized this is more than anyone around here has ever seen. I mean, it's just utter devastation. We saw Coast Guard helicopters picking people up. But then he was sitting, and I thought, the weight of this on that man's shoulders is just unbelievable. I've been to big fires, but after a day or two, you get to go home. This was going to last forever. And he did an outstanding job. We couldn't have had a better leader, I think. And everything he dealt with, and the thousands of meetings, and the angry people, and just overwhelming. I couldn't believe it. I'm good at ops, but I'm not good at anything. And I just hope Ron's in a good place. I reached out to him, texted, I left him a voicemail, and he said, "I'll call me when through." It's because of his decision. Now we have a whole lot more work to do, but I want to thank Chief Martin for his service to this. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Jim?
Well, Ron, you couldn't have said it any better than what was on my mind to say. So I'm not going to repeat everything. I'm just going to say I concur with what you said, and I sincerely thank Chief Martin for the dedication that he has shown to this community and to this organization from the day he became chief, and certainly through the storm. And like you, I was shocked, and it'll take a while for it to sink in, but we're going to move forward. That's our job now. We have a role to play, and that's our job. We're going to move this organization and this community forward. But thank you, Ron, for how well you stated all of that.
Larry? I would say the same thing. It's amazing, 12 hours, about 12 hours of storm, and it's caused so much devastation, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and everything else. And of course, the people that are joined us today, they lived through that same thing, and it's devastating, and obviously it continues to devastate people. And I think about Ron and all the hours that he spent not eating, not sleeping, just working on our behalf, and so I really appreciate him. And I guess on a lighter note, Jackie, is your new friend Jill going to be at Tallahassee?
Not in Tallahassee, no.
Okay.
She doesn't live there.
Okay. Well, I just wanted you might come down and join you.
She will be back to
Ride the
visit.
bus.
She promised that she will come back to see us again as we continue our journey forward, so.
Well, I'm really jealous of your experience up there in the White House and Becca State.
It was a privilege and an honor.
Yeah, well, you deserve it, there's no doubt about it. You work really hard on behalf of our town, so
Do my best.
we
Do
appreciate
it
it.
without all of you supporting me, so thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. With that, I'm finished.
Thank you. I'd also like to add, you think it's hard to add things about an individual, but, you know, I knew Chief Martin in the total of the 20 years that I've lived here, watched him grow through the ranks, remember him as Captain Ron or Fire Marshal Ron or all the other roles that he filled before Chief. You know, I have a personal connection with him, being instrumental in him saving my life last year. So it's sad to see him go, but we as an organization will continue to move forward. I'm thankful that we have such an outstanding team at headquarters that's able to step up and fill those roles as needed. I have complete confidence in everybody there. They know the phone's always available if they have any questions for any of us. And I encourage them to use it if needed, or Mr. Salzman, if it's on the legal side, please don't hesitate in seeking his guidance. I appreciate the community members for understanding through all this. You know, this is a very personal decision on his part, and I respect his privacy in it. I, like Ron, you know, you always want to know what's going on in somebody's mind, but you never know the complete story. So it's he's reached out to me. I've talked to him just in brief, and he's in a good place. You know, he's happy. I wish him all the happiness and a bright future and whatever that future may hold for him. But you know, our future here as an organization is also bright. You know, we're kind of like the news story I saw the other day with these miraculous little gardens of sunflowers and tomatoes and orchids sprouting up in places that we're never seen. And we're going to be that same way. You know, there's a lot of great future for the district, and you know, most of us may not be here at that point through retirement or election or whatever that process may be. But I feel confident that we're in the right direction with the right people at this time, and we will find a new leader to help us on that journey. So with that, anybody, anything else? All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Nice job.
Thank you.